1992 also benefited greatly for gamers by the appearance of Mortal Kombat. Like the very first time that series arrives, 1992. And I remember being a gamer at that time, and it's in the arcades, and like there are just crowds around those machines, and then suddenly like games are on the news, and there are people talking about violence and the controversy of like what games are doing to kids, and it's like all the issues that we deal with today, like the same narrative is still being played out today, many years later. For me, I love that Mortal Kombat kind of sits at the center of this controversy because the game itself is just super fun. It makes no apologies for that.
I mean, to this day, even Mortal Kombat X or Mortal Kombat 10, I guess, is like, it's still, people look at it and say, how could this be possible? And it's so ridiculously over the top and violent, and that it saw its genesis right here in 1992. So.
And it's the title it was going up against is Street Fighter 2, like a very different game in terms of like tone, or at least in terms of presentation, because it's got this sort of cartoony aesthetic. But Mortal Kombat had these digitized like real life actors, like
real actors, except for Goro.
We look back now. You talk about Mortal Kombat X, and we look back and think, oh, this digitized game looked kind of corny, but then it did not. We're just like, wow, how'd they do that? That's kind of neat. And then blood popping out of them. And there was one in a Rose's discount store in my town, and I would go play it there. It was the only place in town that had it for a while. And I'd go there and play it, and the first time somebody ripped my spine out standing there, because people would just crowd around in the Roses and play Mortal Kombat. They would go to the store just to stand there and play this machine. And I was just like, I felt like I was doing something I shouldn't be. And then I pumped another quarter in immediately. It was shocking, and it was shocking in a way that now is almost quaint. But it wasn't quaint for Congress.
Your dad had one where he worked, right?
Yeah, so my dad, all through my childhood, worked at a liquor store, a gas station. He was the manager there, and they had 2 ever-rotating arcade cabinets in the back of the store. And I remember when Mortal Kombat came out, he came home one day and he was telling my mom and I, he was like, we got this game in the store where you fight people and you rip their heads off and rip their guts out and stuff. And my mom was like, that's disgusting, that's terrible. My dad was like, no, it's awesome. and we would play together. I'd go in there after school and play Mortal Kombat against my dad, and it was amazing. And I think
it stayed there for a long time.
Yeah, it did. It did stay there for super long. That was one of the cabinets that ended up not getting rotated out. And I think, to speak to your point, I think the digitized characters added so much more of a visceral feel to that game.
It's also a game with a strange kind of substance. The fighting in the original Mortal Kombat is weird. It's really not all that good. You compare it to Street Fighter 2, and it's just so much smoother when you play Street Fighter. Mortal Kombat's
the characters are kind of samey in Mortal Kombat. I mean, there are some slight differences, but what distinguishes them are the fatalities.
Exactly. And there's your substance, your fatalities. Those are fantastic. There's also secrets. You have there's a way to go find a secret character, which was a really neat thing for an arcade game. That was a very console idea, making its way into arcades. They found all kinds of little things to stick in their neat little secrets, and the fatalities themselves had an aura of mystique about them because they weren't immediately apparent.
Well, the problem with the fatalities was that you only got a chance to practice them if you won the fight, right? So it wasn't like something like firing off a fireball in Street Fighter or whatever. Like you had to get to a moment, and it was do or die, and if you didn't do it, great, you maybe weren't going to get there again for another few minutes. But you mentioned Congress and Washington getting involved. I mean, this was the game at the heart of this video game violence debate. And Joseph Lieberman and some of the other folks said, video game industry, you've got to clean up your act or we're going to do it for you. And this was the game that caused the industry to create the ESRB. We have that today because of Mortal Kombat.
You can actually go back, C-SPAN has those hearings on their website, and you can go back and watch them. They're archived there. And it is high comedy. It really is. The stakes were very high. I mean, it was a situation where, because it wasn't just about protecting the children, it was about politicians finding an easy target. It was about Nintendo and Sega finding ways to go at each other in a public forum, and Nintendo throwing the rest of the video game industry under the bus.
Because Nintendo backed off from the violence in the game. You got punched, and what came out?
Like green. Nintendo called it sweat.
Right. And whereupon Sega gave us the ABAC-ABB code, which enabled blood in the Genesis version. But Nintendo was also kind of like, look over there at them, they're evil. We are protecting your children. It was really kind of ridiculous.
How much do you think the game benefited from the controversy around it, just in terms of marketing?
I mean, I don't think you can understate how much it benefited. That game might not have had even a tenth of the impact that it would have if it hadn't been on this national stage. I think putting it in the limelight in that regard, it's kind of, once something is off limits, you want it so much more. And I think that definitely worked in Mortal Kombat's favor.
Absolutely. There have been gross video games before this. but this was the one that everybody paid attention to, and that's
Certainly,
what
Joseph Lieberman.
and we couldn't get enough of it. I remember having more than one all-night, overnight sleepover party where we just sat and played Mortal Kombat till the sun came up.
Well, and it came out for everything. I mean, if you owned a video game platform, odds were within a couple of years you had Mortal Kombat on it.
Yeah, certainly.